House Bill 645 by Lamberth relative to firearms ownership by mental health patients. Madam Speaker, members, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 789.
Representative Lamberth moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 789, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Lamberth.
Madam Speaker, I move passage of Senate Bill 789 on third and final consideration.
Representative Lamberth moves passage of Senate Bill 789 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment 1 spread on the members' desk in Amendment Pack 2.
Chairman Lundberg, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment requires clerks who are unable to make direct reports to the NCIS to provide sufficient information to the AOC, who is then required to make reports on behalf of those clerks as soon as practical. Move to adopt.
Chairman Lundberg moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, properly seconded. All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye. Those opposed say no. You adopt. Next amendment.
Amendment 2 by Lundberg in Amendment Pack 2.
Chairman Lundberg, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In Section 9 of Amendment 1, which we just adopted, we added additional duty to report for mental health care providers. When we drafted the amendment, we failed to include the additional duty to report in the code, and where the providers receive liability protection for making that required report. And this amendment corrects that. Move to adopt.
Chairman Lundberg moves adoption of House Amendment number 2, properly seconded. All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 2 say aye. Those opposed say no. You adopt. Next amendment.
No further amendments, Madam Speaker.
Representative Lamberth, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Lamberth renews his motion. Discussion on the bill. Representative Alexander.
Representative, would you mind telling me why we need this bill, sir?
Yes, sir, absolutely. There are two different provisions in this bill. The first of which, we have about 5 counties out of 95 that are currently reporting involuntary committals where a judge has heard evidence from multiple doctors and has decided that an individual is a danger to themselves and to others and has involuntarily committed them. That's like a judgment from a court saying that someone is a convicted felon or something else. Only a few counties are sending those in currently to the state for them to be entered into a database and everything else. This speeds up the process and streamlines it on the first part of this bill to make sure our clerks, it makes it a little easier on them and sets some specific time constraints within 3 days of when they get that judgment, just like they do with the criminal judgment. So that's the first part of it. It makes sure that information goes in, and it's supposed to go in already. This just makes that system better. The second part of this, which is very different from what our Senate counterparts passed, says that if someone makes an actual threat of injury or death to their mental health provider, their psychiatrist, their psychologist, to about a reasonable identifiable victim. For instance, they have made a specific threat. They're going to shoot a specific named individual, and their doctor believes that they both have the ability and will carry that out, then that doctor is supposed to report that to law enforcement. Under current law, they're supposed to report that to the victim, which, as you can imagine, doesn't work out very well because many times they can't track the victim down. They can't do anything to prevent a tragedy from happening when a person has been there and told them, I'm going to go do this, and their doctor believes it. There's really nothing in the current law that allows them to just go tell a cop about that and let that officer investigate whether or not there's anything to it. So that's why we need this legislation. And specifically, I can give you an example. In Aurora, Colorado, the mental health doctor that was treating the young man who then went and shot up a movie theater was trying to tell everyone she could that he had homicidal tendencies, had I specifically identified a threat, how he was going to carry it out, and that he had the means to. And unfortunately, under their law and under ours, there's no way that they could tell law enforcement. And so the only thing that happened, he got his university pass revoked, and then we know the end of the story.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative John DeBerry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would sponsor you for a question.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I have a question that one of my facilities down in Memphis need answered. In Section 8, as the bill is amended, it's noted that there is a requirement that the mental health facility report to law enforcement the date that the patient's involuntary commitment was ordered. Now, what I need clarification on and also verification on is, for the record, is that date considered that being the date that the judge approves the final order in the court of for involuntary commitment?
It would be my understanding that that order is not final until the judge actually signs it. So it would be the date that the judge actually signed the order. Because until that time, you are not involuntarily committed until a judge makes that determination.
Until the judge makes the determination.
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Representative Tidwell.
Sponsor Yale.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I noticed in the first rewrite of that we had a fairly liberal interpretation of the technician interpreting what was a bodily threat. I also noticed in the First Amendment that you expanded that considerably, and I like that. I also note that maybe you in accepting the Senate's version, and we added the amendment after you accepted that it is now in the posture of being different from the Senate version. I would explicitly ask you to watch that. If we come back through, would you do that?
Absolutely. In fact, I believe that this version is much more to what we were trying to accomplish with this bill, period. The Senate's version, we've improved upon it greatly. That's in all due respect to our Senate peers. But this is a well thought out, a well reasoned. We have gotten all the mental health providers on board. I literally had a conversation just a few minutes with one to try to make sure this language is just right to protect the doctor-patient relationship and also protect our community. So yes, I am going to be watching that very closely, and I do feel like this is a greatly improved version from anything that was passed in the Senate. Theirs was a good starting point.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Sometimes we get an X and a square on somebody's person in the computer, and it ruins their life forever. Thank you for that.
Representative Mike Turner.
Hey, you touched on that just a minute ago, the question I had. The doctor-patient confidentiality, this does not infringe upon that, in your opinion, or?
No, I do not believe it infringes upon it. In fact, I think it gives the doctor an out. The last amendment we added on there gives them civil liability if they feel like somebody is going to carry that threat out. They have the ability, the desire, and the tools to be able to do it. If a doctor then feels like, if I don't do something here to stop this person from killing somebody, then it's going to happen. And so this gives that doctor an out in those rare circumstances. These are very, very rare circumstances to tell an officer. And currently they don't have that freedom. So I don't think it destroys the doctor-patient privilege. I think it is a very, very unique circumstance that will even affect it.
And unfortunately, we got a lot of mentally ill people out there, and we need to do everything we can to help them get back to normal. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think we also have a right or really a duty as legislators to protect those people who may be victims of somebody who's acting violently to cause mental illness. I think it's a good bill, and I appreciate your work on this bill and then satisfying some of the issues as far as doctor-patient confidentiality and some other things. So I'm going to be supporting this bill. I think it's a good bill. It's a good public safety bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Just some points of clarification, because, I mean, even the NRA talks about the importance of getting firearms out of the hands of, for lack of, I guess, dangerous minds. But I need some clarifications, because there's one group I'm very worried about. Veterans have been just getting attacked left and right. You know, we have Feinstein saying, literally saying that all veterans are crazy and we can't have firearms in their hands. So what I just want... I'm concerned that maybe we're going to have a chilling effect, because for reasons like this, veterans do not go to get counseling. I mean, even private groups have been formed, like Not Alone and things like that, to protect veterans under that truth that we won't talk about what you talk about. So you had made a comment, and we were rushed. I want you to talk about how those standards that have to be so crystal clear, because I want to make sure our vets can go talk and speak freely. And I guess the second part of this, so that I can sit down, the second part of that is to protect against abuse of the mental health professionals. I don't want someone to see themselves suddenly as they are the Second Amendment police. And I want to make sure, there's nothing, I guess they won't be held liable if they come and report. But what if they report just because they can? Mm-hmm. And is there anything to curb the flip side of that from abuse of that? Thank you. Absolutely.
Both good questions. First and foremost, I will say that I have nothing but the utmost respect for our veterans service. It's the reason that I get to stand in this well and to be able to bring a bill, and that we're all here today. And I would never bring a bill that would in any way deter their ability to be able to get treatment after they have gone through some of the stuff that you've seen in many other veterans in this room. This in no way affects them unless they are sitting in a doctor's office and give a specific threat against a specific individual, a named individual, and the doctor feels like they're going to carry that out. So it's not enough to just come in and say, look, I'm thinking about hurting somebody today. That doesn't reach this threshold. It has to be a specific individual, a specific threat, and the doctor feels they're going to carry it out. As to the second part of it, that is the difference between our version and the Senate's version. Just because a doctor reports this to law enforcement, it doesn't in any way affect that veteran down the road. It's just background information for law enforcement in case they need to respond later to a further situation. It would take additional actions outside of that doctor's office for any crime to have been committed. It's not a crime to say, I'm going to do something. It's a crime to go out and act in furtherance of that comment.
Yes, Representative Johnny Turner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to follow up on the questions that were raised by my colleague, you emphasized that due diligence would be given to the veterans. Will the same kind be done to the civilians? Because
absolutely, and I appreciate you asking that question. To be very clear, the doctor-patient privilege, the doctor-patient relationship is sacrosanct. If doctors are out there violating that, they will lose their license. That will happen. So if some doctor, because of whatever reason, wants to start violating their oath and their relationship with their patients, they can lose their license, they'll be sued. I mean, there are tons of statutes to protect that. This statute only builds upon what's already on the books in those rare circumstances when there's a direct threat. The protections are already built in for both civilians and veterans. This doesn't affect that at all.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Further discussion? Is there objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 789 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote. Miller, aye.
Ayes 81, 7 nays, 1 present not voting.
Senate Bill 789 having received a constitutional majority hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill.